Welcome back to Modernly Old Fashioned, a blog where I share our homesteading lifestyle. I'm Melissa, and today I will be doing my very first Can With Me video. We are going to make mulberry jelly. When I'm canning, I like to have a clean sink and clean countertops. It gives me a little bit more room to work, and then I just feel like I can focus on canning and not canning and cleaning at the same time. So here I'm just filling my sink up with hot water and some soap to clean the jars and get them all prepared. I have brought these jars up from downstairs. My recipe calls for, or should make, about 6 half pints, but I bring up 7 just in case I have extra. And I always run my finger over the rim and check the base, check all over, and make sure there's no little fractures in the glass and there's no chips in the rim. If there's any chips if there's any cracks in the bottom, the glass could possibly break while canning, and if there's any chips in the rim, you might not get a very good seal, so this is very important to do. Once I've given all the jars a thorough inspection, I go ahead and wash them off. Now these aren't like dirty jars by any means. They are all washed before I store them, but of course dust builds up and stuff like that, so I just give them a good rinse. You want to make sure your jars are nice and sanitized before you use them, and I leave them in the hot water. That keeps them warm so that when it is time for me to put jelly in them, they are not cold, which is very important. And then I go ahead and start filling my canner up with water. You want to get your canner on the stove as soon as possible because it does take a little while to get that up to the boiling point. And then I go ahead and gather all my supplies that I will need. I have my lids and my rings, I have my pectin, my mulberry juice, and my sugar. It is very important to pre-measure and have your sugar all ready. Once it's time to add it, you want to add it all at once, otherwise it can easily scald if you are measuring and then adding. And then I have my funnel and my tongs to lift the jars in and out of the hot water with, very important, and also my magnetic lid lifter. I can show you how to use that later. So now I pour my juice into the pot. You want to make sure your pot is large enough that when it starts to boil that it does not boil over. And also add in the pectin, and then I just stir and make sure it does not burn. At this point, you don't necessarily have to constantly stir. You can leave it for a few seconds here and there, but you just don't want it to let it sit for too long. I had forgotten to put my lids in a little saucepan of simmering water, so that's what I was doing right there. Just put them in there and turn it on low, keeps them warm. Now I'm going to keep stirring until I get to a hard boil stage, and that is where I can't stir it down. It'll keep boiling no matter how hard I stir. So here is a hard boil stage. It's kind of hard to tell looking down into a pot of dark mulberry juice, but you can see that it's boiling even though I'm stirring it. So that is exactly where I want to be. Once it reaches that hard boil stage, I'm going to pour in that sugar that I had pre-measured and keep whisking. I cannot stop whisking at this point because if I do, it will easily scald. There's such a high sugar content that it doesn't take much for it to scald and ruin your whole batch of jam or jelly. And pretty soon here I'm going to be noticing that it's getting closer to the hard boil stage, again, where you cannot stir down that boil. And that's what we're looking for. Yay, I got it there. So I'm going to set my timer to 1 minute, and I just want to keep stirring for that entire minute. This is where it's boiling this whole minute, so that's where your pot needs to be big enough so that it does not boil over. And once that minute is up, I will take and remove the pot right off of that burner because I want to stop cooking immediately. And there's my lids all ready. And I'm taking it, putting it over on a hot pad. This is just how my setup is right now. My kitchen's kind of still not put together here, so I wasn't quite sure how I was gonna set this up, but it worked just fine for doing this jelly. And I take my funnel, put it on my jars. I had moved them obviously from the sink over onto a towel just to catch any splatters and stuff. And I want to fill this up to a 1/4 inch headspace. So that's just a 1/4 inch from the top of the jar to where my jelly is. And so here I am finishing up. I got 6 perfect half-pint jars of jelly. Worked out pretty well that way. And I'm taking a paper towel and wiping off the rims. This is just important so you don't have any residue, sticky residue left from the jelly that might affect the seal. And picking up my lids with my little handy dandy magnetic lifter. Not really necessary, but it came with a kit and it works well, so I go ahead and use it. And then I'm adding on my rings. They are cleaned and just tighten them to fingertip tight. My water is already boiling, so I can go ahead and put the jars in there using the special tongs. They work fantastically. You obviously do not want to get splashed by that boiling water. And I do have a rack in there that the jars are sitting in so that they don't fall over. Okay, so the last jar is in, lid is on, and then I keep it going at high until it reaches a full boil again. There it is, it's at a full boil, so now we can start the timer. And here, these will go for 10 minutes. Time's up, jars are done, so now it's time to turn off the oven and start taking them out of the water. And I just realized that I forgot my hot pad. I use this as an extra little precaution so that I don't accidentally slip or drop a jar, because that would just make me want to cry. There's so much work going into this. So I just pick the jars up with the tongs on one hand and put the hot pad under it on the bottom, so I'm securing it from both ends. Again, there's just so much work going into this that I would just be sick if I accidentally, dropped a jar. The jars are all out, and now I'm just waiting for them to seal. I will listen for the ping and then look at the top and see if they're indented at all. I don't want to push down on the top at all, just let them seal on their own. Up here you'll see that I do touch one of the lids, but that's just because it did already seal and I was making sure I wasn't just seeing things. I made 2 batches of jelly this day, so I yielded 12 half pints of mulberry jelly. This is roughly 24 hours later. I'm going through and just touching all the lids to make sure that it really did seal, and they all did. So now I have to go ahead and mark on them, what's in there. So I just write mulberry. Probably should have put jelly on there, but I think I just know that that's what I have in there. And the month and the year, I rarely ever put the date. Month and the year is enough for me. And I don't usually use stickers or anything like that. I just find that to be an unnecessary extra step. I just write it right on the lid. And I go ahead and remove all the rings so I can take them downstairs to store them. Last year I started a journal type thing with all my canning, and that really helped me to remember what I'd canned, and I can look back and say, hey, when did I can beans last year and how many pints or quarts did I do? And I don't have to rely on my memory so much. So that is what I'm doing here, starting my 2018 canning log. Of course, I just had to make it a little bit fancy. And then I just write, I don't really keep, too much detail, just the date, what I canned, and how much. That's it. Now it's time to just take them downstairs and put them in my canning room. And I cleared a spot here. I do have some extra leftover jams and jellies from last year, but this year my strawberry crop was not good at all, so I'm grateful that I do have some leftover from the previous year. We can still enjoy some strawberry jam. Thank you for joining me today on my first ever Can With Me. I do plan on doing a lot more of these, so make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any. And if you really enjoyed this video, I would love if you gave it a thumbs up. It helps me out a ton. Again, thank you for stopping by the homestead.